Hi, everyone, and welcome to another edition of CEO and Market Expert Interviews. I'm your host, Lucian. Some of you know me as Triangle Investor from X. Today, I have Andy Carmichael in my show. Andy is the Vice President of Exploration for Cosa Resources, and he's here to tell us more about the recently finished drilling at their Ursa project. Andy, welcome back. It is always great to have you.
Yeah, thanks, Lucian. It's great to be back.
Thanks, Andy. First of all, how are you, Andy? How did your winter went?
Yeah, it was a good winter. It wasn't without its challenges, but I think it came off pretty well. We're pleased with the results we had. Given that was our first drill program as a company and at our Ursa project, I think it went quite well. We set out to evaluate one of the 11 target areas that we outlined in 2023. And to do that, we drilled offensive, shallowly inclined drill holes to look for features that you'd see at a major Athabasca uranium deposit. And the third and final hole intersected a broad zone of alteration structure in the sandstone, a few hundred meters above the unconformity. And we're seeing features in that look like things that you see around a uranium deposit. And so we think it's a great and very encouraging result. And, it exceeded our expectations for a first drill program. And we're really looking forward to getting back there this summer and doing some more work to follow that up.
Exceeded expectations. I believe that those two words investors like to hear, definitely. Okay, Andy, I remember your winter geophysics being delayed due to weather and logistical challenges. Was it similar situation with this drill program?
Yeah, it was an abnormal winter in Saskatchewan. It certainly hindered things a bit, but not too much. We were able to get quite a bit of work done. There was a sequence of things that all had to happen in sequence and on time. We had to do 100 kilometers of ground EM surveying, build a winter trail, mobilize and build a brand new camp, mobilize the drill equipment, supplies, everything we need to get drilling, and then do all that in a very tight schedule. So even without taking into account the winter conditions, that was complex, and I actually think it went very well.
Excellent. Andy, how many meters and holes did you complete versus what you planned? Did you go as expected?
We got a little bit more done than we thought we'd be able to, given the late start that winter threw at us. So we went up there trying to get at least 2 holes done. And we were able to get 3 holes, a little more than 3,400 meters done before the spring arrived and forced us to pause.
Mm-hmm. If you can give me some color on how far apart are these holes? What is the area that you canvassed or tested with this strategy versus previous operators on the project?
Yeah, the holes were completed over about a 1,200 meter width across strike at our Kodiak target area where we did some ground EM, and that's what we were following up. I think that our drill strategy and what we were trying to do is a little bit different from the historical workers. So historical drilling, it's all vertical holes. And the one good thing about a vertical hole is it gets you to target with the minimum meters required. But that's really where the good parts end. This is an environment where everything's really steep, like the basement geology is almost vertical. The structures and alteration that we're trying to find in the sandstone are near vertical. And so when you drill a vertical hole in that environment, you're really only evaluating this very, very narrow strip, very close to the drill hole. And so we took a different tack, and we drilled 3 holes as shallowly inclined as we could do it, about 68 to 70 degrees. And we did that for a few reasons. Like, one, these deposits have super sharp boundaries. Like, we know from hurricane you can be just a handful of meters away from high-grade mineralization and not get any radioactivity. Secondly, the conductive trends you find the deposits in tend to be pretty wide. And it's not one homogeneous body. It's a bunch of stacked conductive rocks spread over a significant width. So multiple holes to test it is good practice. Third, the depths that we have on this project, they make conductor picks more challenging. They reduce the accuracy. So you're looking at this scenario where the exploration target, which is these super high-grade deposits, which have a fairly small footprint, they can be smaller than the margin of error in your targeting tool. And so it kind of sounds hopeless, but it's not. Within the basin, the structures that control these deposits, they have a lot of vertical extent. They go way up in the sandstone. And so do the alteration halos that accompany them. And so what we set out to do is to drill these flat holes and canvas a big width across these conductive trends and see if we are seeing that alteration in structure that you would expect at a large Athabasca unconformity hosted uranium deposit.
Yeah, that actually caught my eye in the press release, and it was stated that you have intersected clear evidence of post-Athabasca structure and alteration. Can you please expand a bit on that? Can you explain the significance of that?
Yeah, absolutely. We think that's a great result. So it's a tough one to answer, a great question too, and tough one to answer in just a few words, right? So deposits in the Athabasca are, it's important to remember they have similarities, but they're all unique. The thing they have in common is they need a few key things, right? You need uranium-rich fluids to transport uranium. You need structures, and you need a reductant to precipitate the uranium out of those fluids. So in the Athabasca, it's generally accepted that those uranium-rich fluids are basically in all parts of the basin, or were in all parts of the basin. So that's a given. The structures are a really important component. These fertile structures are generally rooted in the basement. They were active before the sandstone was deposited, and they've been reactivated until well after the sandstone was deposited. And what that does is it breaks up the sandstone in the basement, and it creates space, and that space is the plumbing system that focuses the fluid flow of those uranium-rich fluids. Mm-hmm. At the same time that's happening, it's causing hydrothermal alteration along those structures. And the final thing you need is a reductant, right? And that precipitates the uranium out of the fluids. And, you know, graphite, methane from graphite, sulfides have all been put forth as reducing mechanisms. But what we can tell you is we're seeing sulfides well up in the sandstone, several hundred meters up in the sandstone in this alteration zone. That tells us there was reducing conditions in that system at some point. And we're seeing multiple types of sulfides with iron, lead, and zinc and molybdenum in them. We visually identified. And that's great because we see sulfides proximal to mineralization at Hurricane. You know, that's within meters of mineralization. You'd see sooty pyrite. But, you know, it's the whole, these things are similar but all different. At Fox Lake, the Fox Lake deposit, you can have sulfides hundreds of meters up in the sandstone, and quite a bit of them. So we know that those are present in association with these deposits in the sandstone. And it's not common to see them in background sandstones far away from deposits. Okay, so in summary, we're seeing things that we think are really good and very, very much associated with deposits in this initial target area.
Excellent, excellent. So long story short, for the investors who are not familiar with that topic, the significance of sulfide mineralization is very important, right?
We think so, yes. Yeah. Tells us about the geochemical conditions that we're operating in that alteration zone, and that they're the right ones to potentially create a deposit.
Got it. Do you see all that good stuff in all three holes you drilled?
Yeah, no. We're seeing some encouragement for sure in the first two holes. But hole 3 is clearly the anomalous and standout drill hole, right? And the implication of the results from that one is that if we're seeing that kind of alteration of structure, you know, 250 to 500 meters above the unconformity, that it suggests there could be a stronger system as you get closer to the unconformities. That's usually how it works, right? You see something a few hundred meters up in the sandstone. It's kind of a distal expression. But interestingly, you know, we intersected dravite in the sandstone in hole 3, and that's quite anomalous. Like the massive gravitic breccias, we included core photos in the news release. That's very interesting because, you know, we looked at the historical data, and included in that is this boulder sampling results. And immediately down ice of the Kodiak target area, there's this really strong boron anomaly. And maybe that doesn't mean too much, but boron is dravite is really rich in boron. And if the boron from those boulders is the same source from the same dravite as we intersected in our third drill hole, it suggests that there's a hydrothermal system that made it to surface, right? 1,000 meters to surface. And that's a very big system, even by Athabasca Basin standards. It's really encouraging and definitely worth following up.
Yeah, sounds really great. You say geochemistry and is still pending. What do you expect to see, and how will that affect summer plans? Not just geochemistry, it's reflectance as well.
Yeah, good question. It's hard to predict what you're going to see in geochemistry, right? It's not really feasible. It's very much a wait and see what the lab tells you have. Perhaps the only exception would be dravite. It's really distinctive looking mineral in the basin. It's sort of this pale robin's egg blue color to it. And we have some spectral results. We've confirmed there's dravite present, but we don't really have any geochemistry back yet. But what we're hoping to see is some contrast in the geochemistry, but between holes 1 and 2 and holes 3, where there's some enrichment in hole 3. And then more specifically, what we want to see is in that alteration zone and immediately adjacent to it, we want to see increases in concentration of uranium and uranium pathfinder elements, right? Relative to the unaltered rocks on either side of it. That would be a tremendous upgrade to the project, or especially that target area, and be just about the best follow-up target you could hope for.
Mm-hmm. We touched on the summer drilling as well. So, when do you expect to start drilling at Ursa in the summer? And do you know approximately how many holes you plan to drill?
Yeah, we're planning to get started late July, early August, and we're really anxious to get back up there and get the bit turning again. But we're planning to deploy a pretty large-scale ANT survey over Ursa beginning in mid-May. We're going to cover the entire trend that Kodiak is a part of. That trend also hosts all 3 of the historical mineralized drill holes on the project. And so we think it's a great trend. And by deploying that survey early, we expect to get the results back in time to have it influence our summer drilling. So we're delaying the drilling a little bit until we have those results in hand.
Mm-hmm.
And that would be late July, early August. So it's important to note too that during the winter we mobilized everything we need to do that summer drilling. So when we show up, it's really a turnkey operation with minimal support required.
Sure. Will you test any new areas in the summer drilling? I mean, where do
It's
you plan to start, and some new areas, will you test them?
Well, it's likely we'll start at Kodiak, right? We're very encouraged by the results, especially if we get positive geochemical confirmation back. The drill's already there. It's sitting on the pad of the 3rd hole. And there's a lot of efficiencies with minimizing how much the drill moves and how far it goes. But if we don't get the results we need to see at Kodiak, we're prepared to move on to another target area. That's going to be influenced by the ANT results. But right now, we really like the other target areas on that same trend, Kodiak North, Smoky, and Panda West.
Okay, you mentioned ANT. It's short of ambient noise tomography, I believe. Maybe I'm wrong. Can you please share us some more details about that?
Yeah, you're right. It's ambient noise tomography, and
I got it right.
it's a
Okay.
really, yeah, it's a really interesting new technique to the basin. It's been around for quite a while. It hasn't been used in the basin very much. It's what it is. It's a seismic survey, but it's passive, right? You don't generate your own seismic signal. It's you deploy these sensors in the grid, and they listen to the existing noise that's always present in the bedrock. And you leave these nodes in the ground for a few weeks, pick them up, collect the data. And the objective through processing and interpretation is to create a velocity model of seismic waves in the bedrock. And the general principles are that these waves move faster in more dense rock and more slowly in less dense rock. And so the idea is that the sandstone is pretty homogeneous. It varies, but in a systematic way in general. And where you see some changes in seismic velocity in your model, whether it's faster or slower, one reasonable conclusion is to say that's due to alteration and or structure in the sandstone. And that would be a great follow-up target, especially if it sits over top of one of your basement conductive trends. So we think it's great. We think it's has potential to be a fast and low-cost method to evaluate really large areas. And that's important to us with this 65-kilometer long project. And we think there's some merit to it. It makes sense to us just intuitively, but also we're seeing other companies have put out some results. Most recently, ISO Energy released some drilling results from drilling a targeted ANT, right? And it seems to have been effective for them in locating exactly the kind of things that we wanted to do. And so we're really looking forward to getting our hands on those results.
So would you say it's a similar approach, like there?
Yeah, very similar approach.
Okay. And the final question, COSA is not just Ursa. You have more than 200,000 acres in the Athabasca Basin, multiple projects. What work will you do outside of Ursa this summer?
Yeah, we do. We have quite a few projects. Like you said, over 200,000 hectares. We're going to be fairly busy, you know. We're doing that ANT at Ursa, but at the same time, we'll be covering Orion. If you might recall, we did airborne at Orion in 2023 and got a wonderful looking anomaly there, which we haven't been able to follow up yet. And so as first follow-up, we're going to deploy ANT to Orion. But also we're deploying airborne electromagnetic and gravity surveys at our Orbit and Aurora projects by Key Lake. You know, these are a stone's throw away from the mill that's processing the McArthur River ore. There's little to no sandstone cover at them. They've seen very little work, but they either sit along strike of really interesting results, or they have interesting results from the early 80s that were never followed up, contained within them. And we think both of those projects have a great chance for returning an economic deposit, and our goal is to have them drill ready for 2025.
Okay. That was Andy Carmichael, Vice President of Exploration for Cosa Resources. Andy, thank you for clarification. Thank you for coming to my show. And a lot of things are much clearer right now. Thank you once again. And I wish you luck with Ursa in the summer as well, and other projects too. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Lucian. It was great to be back.